This presentation focuses on the moral majority's beginnings and the influences that the moral majority would have on America. So the founding began in the late 70s as a reaction to the radical politics of the 1960s. It was the radical countercultural movement of the late 1960s and early 70s that many conservative Christians found disturbing. And there was also a movement that began with secular humanism that began to influence American culture that many conservative Christians found appalling. And in 1970s, you have the Roe v. Wade decision that would influence many conservatives to become pro-life because of the case's ultimate decision to legalize abortion. And so there were several founders. So among them were Jerry Falwell, Tim LaHaye, Pat Robertson, Charles Stanley. Many of the famous televangelists from the 70s and 80s became involved in the moral majority. Co-founder Tim LaHaye said that he felt that the greatest problem was the influence of humanism over the minds of the nation's children. And so he felt that it was this humanism that was most harmful. And then what really disturbed Falwell about all of this countercultural movement was the fact that many of the Christians were beginning to endorse these new ideas and embracing the counterculture. And so that's really why Falwell founded, along with the help of many other conservative evangelicals, to make the moral majority. The goals and purpose of the moral majority are pretty basic, but they're very broad. There wasn't a real specific exact goal or purpose that the organization had. The main idea was to influence the way the government worked, to influence government to help America and to champion these conservative values. Falwell said in 1980 that we simply want to influence government, not control government. And both he and Pat Robertson would call on evangelicals to help restore America's Christian heritage. Pat Robertson gave many speeches in which he called on evangelicals to help to reclaim America, to take back our nation, to restore our Christian heritage. And so that was the primary goal that they had in mind. Some of the values that the moral majority stood for, including supporting the nuclear family, where you have mom, dad, and kids. They were pro-business and for the private sector. They wanted to see less government involvement, an emphasis on work ethic, people working for a living and not relying on government assistance. They were very pro-life, and this was in response to the Roe v. Wade decision. So they really wanted to support life. A lot of values coincided with the feeling of patriotism, and so they were really looking to boost America and boost patriotism. They also supported things like prayer in schools and daily Bible readings and things that have been taken out of the classroom beginning in the 60s. Some of the accomplishments of the moral majority included things like supporting Ronald Reagan in the 1980 and 1984 presidential election. Reagan would in fact credit the new religious right and the moral majority for helping him win the election. And then again, once Reagan had served his 2 terms, in 1988 presidential election, the moral majority would endorse George H.W. Bush, even though Pat Robertson would run for president as well. But the moral majority would support George H.W. Bush. They saw both Reagan and Bush as people who embraced their values, especially their conservative political beliefs. But a lot of what the moral majority did not only involved the supporting of endorsing presidents and national elections, but also a lot of it involved grassroots campaigns to encourage morality, to see changes in America's values. For example, the things that they would support would be, the public schools considering what their curriculum was and making sure curriculum was godly and moral. That they didn't want to see public schools to be using curriculum materials that would promote a secular worldview and to promote immorality. And a lot of this is done at the local level, with parents becoming involved in petitioning school boards and helping to shape local district policies. And so that's a lot of what the moral majority was known for, and we see as its lasting accomplishment.